Hey everyone, and welcome back to the World of Warcraft news, where finally we've got some clarity on what's going on, which is a big relief. So yes, that actually means vague patch date news, some solid info. We've also got a bunch of classic news, a whole bunch, and changes to the live game that you're probably going to feel. So with that said, let's get stuck in. First up, the big news. Blizzard announced earlier this week that the PTR for patch 9.1 is coming, and that it will be out in around 2 weeks' time. Oh, what a relief. Wow. And they also did announce raid testing details, that would come basically 1 week after that, so we'll have to see what it means for the raid. Now, what you probably want to know is what this actually means for you, right? What it means for us as players. Well, if past PTR and patch release cycles are anything to go by, well, with, anything from a 2.5 to 3 month PTR to patch release date turnaround, then we can expect, I'd say at the very earliest, a late June release to perhaps a mid-July release, given that time window. However, based on the Towley quote that we covered in last week's news episode from his conversation with the Blizzard insider, well, apparently June would be optimistic and July/August may be more realistic. Of course, only time will tell, though. Hopefully it'll be a bit sooner, of course. But I would say that if more time is needed for this patch to reach its full potential, then taking the community feedback on board and having a bit of a slower PTR is probably what would be the best thing for World of Warcraft's health right now. Given that the primary problem with this expansion is it really did have to be rushed, and that's really what just sort of comes in the game like being not that well tied together, being less than the sum of its parts. So overall, it is a very long time to wait for a 0.1 patch. I would say, especially given, well, the content that we've got right now. Compared to, say, Legion, we just do have to deal with us having vastly less content in the game right now, and it really just is as simple as that. Now, for what I'm doing, I'm considering doing an anima challenge video and a proper hop into PvP with rated battlegrounds. I've been picking up some off pieces of versatility gear from the vault, but beyond that, I'll be fine with it taking a while. I'll be on the PTR, and hey, Rome Total War Remastered's coming out at the end of the month, so you're damn right I'm going to be doing that too. Now, for those who really want to mono-game World of Warcraft, right, for them to just always have a WoW subscription rolling, to always play the game, yeah, man, you're just down for anima grinding and alts. That's what it is. Now, as I've said, Shadowlands, not really. It's not more than the sum of its parts. I think that if it was more than the sum of its parts, then this period of time would feel a lot better. But as it stands, the likes of the anima system, the world content, the Maw, and Torghast, I think those are things that just are not holding people's attention like Blizzard thought they would. And I think that means that the only people who are going to be, or not the only, but the people who mainly will be happy with the game are those who can raid log, do Mythic Plus, kind of get engaged in that very gamey, systemic sorts of content. So overall, I'd say it's clearly a time where introspection is needed for the team, where it is important, so they can work out why Shadowlands didn't feel as good as it really should have. Not that they've really got that time to be introspective, because they're behind. And that's what we now have to talk about, because patch 9.1 is obviously late. That means the team are generally behind. So, if 9.1 is late, the team is behind, then obviously patch 9.2 is, not going to come out very soon after, right? Because they'll be stuck playing catch-up. And if they're playing catch-up for 9.2, well, they're going to be playing catch-up for 9.3. And this does worry me for multiple reasons, because number one, you do worry that they'll finish the Shadowlands patch content and will have made less progress on 10.0, the next expansion, than they otherwise would have liked to. And of course, if you look at the Battle for Azeroth expansion, what you see is a team constantly behind and having to play catch-up, because they had to triage with patch 8.1, patch 8.2 is where they were finally able to get a big old shot of content in there, but even that patch, of course, had its struggles, had its big job of having to, fix up the Azerite system by giving people something new. And then if you look at patch 8.3, our world content was just reuses of 2 zones. The raid was a skybox. I don't think any of us expected Nyalotha to be that underwhelming, right? As much as the skybox and all that stuff was pretty damn awesome. Which does make me worry that we're going to have a 9.3 or maybe an end of this expansion that feels cut down. I mean, look how fast Battle for Azeroth raced through its plot lines. I mean, BFA raced through the plot lines so much that I'm fairly sure most people didn't really know what was going on. Certainly with a lot of the details, it's obvious people didn't know what was going on. So I do worry that these knock-on effects will just continue and that Blizzard will have to deal with a backlog for a long enough time. I'm not really sure how they can fix that other than just cutting their losses and maybe doubling down on the next expansion, or maybe doing a BFA and, instead of a big ambitious final patch, we get one that, say, has the world content being very cut down. Now that said, doing a Warlords of Draenor and just scrapping a bunch of the expansion midway through, that is what got us Legion, and Legion was pretty awesome in terms of the amount of content. But I think we can all agree that having that many scuffed expansions is a very, very bad thing. I'm not sure what the solution is, to be honest, other than perhaps if it's so easy for the WoW team to end up behind schedule, because it happened in BFA even without a big pandemic, then maybe that just tells us that they need more resources, they need more capabilities. And certainly it was nice seeing on Twitter today a post of like a whole bunch of art team job listings. And we do know that Activision Blizzard as an overall organization does want to hire way more developers. I believe their push is from like now to 2023. So hopefully the WoW team gets some of them. I don't know. It's not going to be a busy time in Azeroth for a while though. That much I do know. Then next up, it's time for Classic. So, this week's update to TBC Classic Beta increased the level cap from 64 to 68, and you know what that means? Nagrand. So, obviously, fun and awesome. I'm not going to be doing it because I'm saving that for myself as a player because I want to experience it properly with my own character. They also pushed along some bug fixes and the AoE spell cap, and we also have got no idea when more beta invites will happen. That, of course, is not the only thing that's been going on in the realms of Classic, because Vanilla Classic is very much seeing a big change. So, to the surprise of many people, Blizzard announced earlier this week in a very lengthy blue post that they are actually going to introduce a new item to Classic that is, it's big in what it does. It will effectively store all of your world buffs for use at a later time. Now, this combats, the frustrating buff Dispel Griefing by players of the opposite faction, and, the problem of people having to get all of their world buffs for raid, and then not being able to play the game, lest their buffs will run out and expire, so people will just get all their buffs and then log off till raid. Blizzard felt like the optimal way to play the game shouldn't be to log out. So their solution is something called the Chrono Boon Displacer. And what this is going to do is, it's an item you can get from Chromie in Anderhal after a questline. And the way that it works is that after a cast, it turns into a supercharged Chrono Boon Displacer, which gives you a new buff that displays the world buffs that it's storing and their durations. Now, while under the effect of that buff, you will not be able to re-obtain buffs that are stored inside the Displacer. So all this really means is that when it comes time for raid, you can use this and get your world buffs, which basically means you can collect your buffs, store them, continue playing the game, and then do your raid. You don't have to log out, right? Lest your buffs expire. So this is fairly big as a change, actually. It may seem very big to many. Blizzard clearly knew that, though. They reassured us, closing in their blue post, they say, "We know this is a change, and any change to Classic is something we want to be careful with, but in this case, the fact that playing optimally literally requires you to stop playing was just too much for us to sit idly by." So there you go. As for my personal take, I think it's reasonable enough, actually. It's certainly a case of threading a needle, and I think they've done it quite successfully. Now, as for TBC Classic, they have announced that world buffs will actually not be usable at all for raids, though back in actual TBC, most world buffs wouldn't apply to level 70s anyway. So, there's that. It's not all for Classic though, because we've got money news. Blizzard are trying to work out what price they can get away with for their Classic character cloning service. Basically, they sent out a survey asking people how likely they would be to purchase the cloning service. That, of course, would give them both a TBC character and a Classic character. And there's a range of price points from $9.99 to $39.99. And yes, $39.99. That seems a bit wild for an upper limit, but the thing is, Blizzard probably knows that people put so much time into their Classic character progression that they're very attached to those characters, perhaps even a lot more so compared to Modern, and they probably know that people value both the character and the time savings of this massively, because if you want to get to high-level TBC characters while still having your Classic character that you leveled up, yeah, I mean, you've got one boost per account, and then you've got this as well. So there you go. It's certainly a way to make money. It's definitely one that cashes in player attachment, and for a lot of people, it's not super in the spirit of things, but I think we can all know why the bean counters would like to make money from this one. Next up, something that we were not able to cover in last week's news was the big tank damage reduction buffs across the board. This is pretty damn big. So, having come into effect this week, all tanks received a plus 10% damage reduction buff to both physical and magical damage. So that's pretty big, right? However, Vengeance Demon Hunters are actually the exception here. They received a minus 10% damage, or magic damage reduction nerf. That's because they were essentially unkillable to pure magic damage before, and only receive a 5% physical damage reduction. So what this should do is bring all tanks a bit closer together, more in line in terms of, their tankiness in Mythic Plus dungeons, things like that. Though Prot Paladin maybe will need a little bit more survivability. Now, this is not going to make Vengeance DHs lose their spots in Raid or Mythic Plus. Basically just big old balance wave, but yeah, I mean, it's a big one. It's hitting almost all of the tanks. Now, what's good about this is that Blizzard have actually given some in-depth insight and reasoning into why they did this. I bring that up to say that that's quite nice, because it's something that is notably lacking with a lot of other changes that they make, so definitely good to see. Oh, don't worry about Arena either, this is only a PvE thing. And next, coming in late last week, was the removal of the Soul Ash cap. Now, that's good, and also a bit puzzling, because I don't think many people's problem with this system was that there was a cap. People's problem was far more the rate of acquisition, especially for their alt characters. And I mean, it is quite funny. I think back to, say, Mists of Pandaria, where, you hit, Revered or Exalted with a rep, and then you get an item that boosts your alt's rep gains with that faction. You cap your VP for your character back in MoP, and you get a buff on all your other characters that increases their VP gains. That seems to have been the alt-friendliness that worked back in the day of Mists of Pandaria. And I think that's what people would want for something like Soul Ash, for it to feel a bit better in their alts. Of course, most people's issue with Soul Ash is just how long it takes to farm it up. It does take ages, and that really does put people off wanting to level and gear up an alt, or maybe try out some new legendary powers on their main. I think in many cases because, the Venn diagram of people who love Torghast and want to be in there a lot, and people who just want to get some Legos for their character, I think the intersection of those two circles, of that Venn diagram, is nowhere near the size that Blizzard thought it would be. So, bit weird, and also, it's a pretty late, it's a late addition to the game, so that is a bit odd. And, there's also some speculation rising that, patch 9.1 is going to be, 3, maybe 4 months away, and you would sort of think that, if 9.0.5 was to do anything, it would be things like the Valor Point system, and then maybe some solutions for Soul Ash, or why people are not enjoying Anima that much. So it's a pity those things didn't happen, but I guess there's this. You can farm up Soul Ash to your heart's content. I guess the thing is that a wise thing to do? Because if you're farming Stygia up right now, that's a stupid thing to do. Because Stygia is like a Season 1 currency, basically, at least insofar as player power goes. But we don't know what Blizzard's Soul Ash plans are. Does the removal of a Soul Ash cap kind of indicate that we should try to farm up some Soul Ash, because it'll be useful in the future? We just don't know. So Shadowlands continues to be the expansion that was just hastily thrown together at the end, and with some confusing things like this going on. And finally, quick bits. Okay, the Dark Moon Fair is in town later this week, starting on Sunday, so of course be sure to get over there for your 10% experience and reputation gains for your alts, as well as all the usual, toys, pets, mounts, and transmog sets. Decent enough time. Then, from Monday the 4th to the 12th of April, the Noble Garden holiday will be live, so that will be another thing to do in-game. And then, for the Ember Court, hold back in doing that until Noble Garden starts. And the reason why is simple, because completing it during Noble Garden will give you a 300% friendship gain buff with your various Ember Court characters, so that'll be quite nice. And then finally, Transmoggers rejoice, since 9.0.5 hit, there was an issue preventing two-handed artifact weapons being transmogrified onto one-handed weapons and vice versa. That frustrated a bunch of people, but the good news is the Blizzard have now hotfixed it, and if you didn't enjoy this video, then the good news is it's over! So that's it, the video's over. There's no more news to talk about. So I guess I'll bid you farewell. I'll say, hey, the Patreon, we've got the daily briefing, there's fresh loot, which, here's past month's loot. We'll have this month's loot very shortly to show you. But yeah, video's over. If you want to watch some more content, though, of course, hit up the Clips channel if you want a whole bunch more World of Warcraft. We've been very surprised how big the Clips channel's been popping. I think it's got almost 1 million views in the last month, which honestly blew my expectations out of the water. So people seem to be enjoying it. So you can check that out. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.